But we can talk about whatever you want. There is literally, you go where you want to go, and we'll go with you.
Yeah. So let's get this thing started officially. And Marc, I think we're just going to start with all four of us tonight.
I mean, that sounds great. So, hi, Rachel.
Hi, Marc.
How are you, and where are you?
Well, as my esteemed colleagues here know now, I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the K-12-6 conference. That's the cybersecurity group led by Doug Levin. April Murdoch and I are on the opening keynote panel. Super grateful for this organization for a number of years now. Lots of our friends around here. I saw Oliver and Stephen from Cybernet as I was racing through to get back to the hotel for this podcast recording, and also Mac from Beaverton. And hello to the three of you as I was high-buying, trying to get back to the hotel on time, which I, in fact, did not.
So you're telling me that cybersecurity is so important that you have your own conferences now?
We do.
That was a terrible joke. Sorry.
It's like you're a coach on Ted Lasso, and we have to bring you up to speed with like the technology world and the challenges.
All I know is football. That is it. But a great Seahawks win.
Football, soccer.
Great Seahawks win.
That was a great Seahawks win.
All right. Well, we have a special. Well, I probably shouldn't be introducing this. I'm going to just sit back and say nothing.
Well, just a second, Marc. So how are you, Marc?
I'm good.
Coach
I'm fighting
Marc.
a cold. It was a terrific weekend before this because I went skiing in Colorado, which was terrific. Terrisa Reeves hung out with us one night while we were there. And we had a lot of fun. It was really, really fun. And that's where I think I got this cold.
Well, mute yourself. And I'm going to introduce Terrisa, and we're going to talk Linewize and welcome our sponsor. And super happy to have Nicole here as well. And it's good to be back for an episode of Plugged In. It's been over a month since we've recorded an episode. Almost 2 months, which is ridiculous. But it turns out that the holidays, January and February, were hard to schedule with a lot of our friends and colleagues. So grateful to everybody for being here tonight.
I think it's worth noting too that this is our first episode where we're inviting a sponsor to sit with us through the whole thing.
We are.
So this is a little bit different tonight. So again, welcome Terrisa and Linewize to the whole conversation this evening.
Thank you.
And if we were going to have a sponsor sit with us the whole time, Terrisa, you're like at the very top part of that list. So Terrisa, tell us about Linewize. I got to meet you a number of years ago and am a happy Linewize customer. And we have a region that is using the Linewize filtering solutions as well as ClassWise, which I think is, with all due respect and apologies to your filter team, the ClassWise team would probably be the one that we'd bring donuts to if we brought donuts to Linewize.
I would too. If they were all local, they'd be getting free breakfast from me all the time.
Yep. So take it away. Tell us a little bit about Linewize. Thanks for your sponsorship this evening and for spending time with us when you're also at a security conference.
Yeah, so funny. So you're in Albuquerque and I'm in Phoenix. We're both going to be doing a couple of panel sessions separately, but kind of in the same space, which I think is interesting. And I was asked to be a part of this summit when someone came up to me and said, "We want you to be a part of a panel at a cybersecurity summit." I went, "But we're not in cybersecurity." But we kind of are. There's a little bit of a blend of the two when you think about it. So I'm excited for the conversation. I'm going to have a couple of districts with me. And our moderator has been gracious to supply me with some, look what's ahead questions. So I don't look like a deer in the headlights when I'm, on stage in front of 300 people. So that's great. So Rachel, would it be helpful maybe start with my background, or would you like to kick it off with the Linewize?
Yeah. So what brought you to Linewize? Because Linewize, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like they're a newer provider in the filter space, not like 20 years old, correct?
Correct. So yeah, so I would consider them a newer kid on the block. I'm in industry speak, 2014 to be honest, and not even started in the United States. They actually started as a parent app in Australia and quickly realized that there's a need outside of that to develop and bring together products and technology and innovation to the filter space that was missing in the industry. So fast forward, we're in, can't believe it, 2026 in almost 20% of school districts in the US. And I'm proud to be a part of supporting a lot of our districts in the West and the Pac Northwest, including you, Rachel, and Nicole. And so it's a really phenomenal story. And part of the reason I joined the company, actually, quickly on my background, I am an accidental entry into tech, to be honest. So my background was I went to college to be a teacher, played softball in college, thought I was going to be an educator and teach biology. I actually have a minor in chemistry and can't use it anymore, but then decided I was not meant to be a teacher, swore off children even. Now 4 children later, here I am working in education tech, but actually started as a reseller. I was doing things like selling telephony backups, switching routing, even putting together maps for mobile for school districts in Kansas, believe it or not. And started talking to a lot of districts in that role. And the reason I became passionate about it was because there's a lot of guys in that role. And I was like, I was the kind of personality that said, I'm going to be that one sales girl in the role because I think I can do this, and kind of learned inherently through that. Found another filtering company and started reselling for that. And then that's kind of where it was born. I did do a short stint outside of education in 2015 through 2023 in mortgage tech, leveraging what I've learned in the industry and supporting districts and kind of pivoting that knowledge into literally lending, residential lending, and helping loan officers pivot. Same issues, different territory. And then I had a good friend of mine who is at Linewize now, who came to me and said, look, we need you back and you need to take a look at what Linewize has been doing. And so a bunch of recon later, I fell in love with the passion and the background and the mission of Linewize. And in 2023, August, to be exact, I joined the company. So I'll be celebrating 3 years this August. So very, very excited. And I can tell you a little bit more now about more about Linewize in detail.
That'd be great.
So I think, first and foremost, I've listened to every single podcast. Let's just put that out there on the recorded call. And I always start with a conversation similar to how you guys do. It's like, oh, how we've met each other. And everyone on the podcast is like, I love ACPE. I love the way it networks and brings people together. It's also part of the conversation today. Spoiler alert. But when we think about these other shows like RTM, COSIN, those regional conferences, right? We hear a lot of the same thing. And I think that's part of the power Linewize brings to the table and the interactions that we're hearing from a lot of our districts. So we hear a lot of the same things. What districts are having challenges with, that is changing. The challenges back in the early 2000s, yes, I've aged myself, and filtering is overblock. Just block it all. We need to be CIPA compliant and forget everything else. And now we have kiddos that are growing up at this digital world. I came out of the non-PC age. The internet did not exist when I graduated high school, right? So it's a big shift in how we're looking at technology. And the way Linewize is looking at it is, how are we really supporting our districts in this evolving space and age of the digital realm? We're actually focused on digital learning, but we're also, by doing so, we're creating a lot of complications, and our kids are smart. So as that evolves, keeping kids safe online, I think we're all in agreement there. The game's still changing. When we think about how we're representing you in your roles as IT leaders, curriculum, Nicole, your role specifically, is there is such a thing as overblocking. So Linewize is a filtering, classroom management, student safety, and data analytics company, but we look actually at it as a trifecta of everything we do is around the student. So while we do amazing products, we have to remember everything we do revolves around our kiddos, and that includes outside of our walls of the school district. These are our parents, our community, and how we're reflecting and bringing that back into the house. So big things we're hearing about: AI chatbots, student safety, cyberbullying. We know their kiddos are smart and they're keeping their IT on their toes with filter workarounds. They are using curriculum tools to get around the filter, which is shocking, right? Shock and awe. So
Not shocking at all.
yeah. So using sites, using docs, using creative search terms, you name it, right? Getting around the safe search filters. Chromebooks, they're going to the OS level and trying to find workarounds. They're getting through the things. And so how Linewize supports that is we're saying, hey, we don't want to overblock and keep our IT out of the filter. That's what we want to do. In the classroom, allowing our teachers to have the autonomy to do the things they need to do in the classroom without sending that help desk ticket, right? Without running into a partial blocked site, getting the access where it needs to happen. So better control, right? And of course, like I mentioned before, partnering with our parents. That's becoming a big topic. Quick side note, I was a board member of a very tiny school district for 3 years with 2 school buildings, literally. Our IT guy was the math teacher and the baseball coach. So I came from that world. So when we think about that, they don't have to only think about how they're managing kiddos and staff and admins and stakeholders. Now we've got the parents. Those are the ones that are coming to board meetings saying, hey, we're advocating as a district to send a device home with our kiddos, but parents are screaming back saying, we need a little bit of control too and understanding what this technology is in our kiddos' hands. And they're falling behind. I'm one of them and I'm in the tech space. And I can be very, very honest about that. So when we think about the overblocking problem, I want to bring a story to the table. District buddy of mine, I was showing him a sites doc. I did not know that this site is nationally known. It is chock full of gaming sites that kiddos are sharing with their friends, and then their friends are sharing it with their friends. And it's these workarounds to bypass the filter. A traditional URL filter is no longer enough. We are a full path filter. For those non-techs, we see everything, right? But it's not enough. Our IT guys and gals are still creating those custom block lists and they're a mile long. So how Linewize has solved for that is we've taken image blurring and video blurring, we attack that, but now we have text analysis. And the text analysis is a game changer because what it is doing is it's now in real time scanning the actual page of that site and making blocking decisions on the page level rather than just the URL. It is a game changer. Who's heard the term whack-a-mole? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. The whack-a-mole game has now become a lot more mitigated because of the text analysis function. And this is how Linewize partners because we're thinking about things inherently as our districts are still coming asking for those solutions. It's a white flag of can't control these areas. Think about news sites, Forbes.com. Kids are able to access Forbes, but somewhere hidden in that page, there's free VPNs, the top 25 free VPNs out there. We're actively blocking at the page level. This is a game changer for our districts. Obviously, around class-wise and classroom management, we're doing the things our teachers are needing to do, inherently built in together, obviously providing the support to allow teachers to override content, applications, maybe some esports, maybe some AI chats, right? And other things to help them be more autonomous in their classroom to do the things they need to do, while also understanding in a state testing role that you may have those users that need that extra time. But then when classroom management's taking screenshots, that becomes another problem. So by removing that piece and hiding that kiddo, but allowing that class to take place without the teacher having to worry about it, these are the little things. I'm a little things person that make a difference in the classroom. And the other area that we really focus is where our monitor student safety conversation comes in. And Rachel, you and I talked about this quite a bit, but this is where that 24/7 human moderation comes in, and it's critical. A lot of states are starting to implement legislation. They're starting to have real conversations, but the problem starts with the people. Our districts don't have the people or the resources to take on phone calls 2 a.m. on a Saturday, or they don't have time to sift through alerts to identify a kiddo at risk. And that's where our team comes in, taking a look at contextually what that information is to reduce false positives, to have a team actually look at the detail before prompting an interaction or intervention in a phone call. These are mitigating the needs for our district staff and focus on the things that matter. Kind of remove that noise, but get to a kiddo before it becomes an issue. And I think when we think about the workload, we have to think about our parents. I have a district here in Arizona, and the CIO has a parent on speed dial because they happen to be neighbors and they're using the parent app, but they don't need to be the IT for the parents either. And our parent app and our community portal is powerful because it's supplying our parents with the ability to set filter policies at home for those personal and school managed devices. A district can now say, hey, parent, after 5 p.m., we allow YouTube in the district, but I'm not a YouTube parent. At my home, we don't do YouTube. Allow the parent the autonomy to lock down that filter even more on those devices, whether they be school-owned or personally owned. Set those time limits. take a look at the history, see what their kid was, and become involved because we're all digitally focused and digitally forward today. Let's take that and allow our parents to become a part of that, as well as offer all those resources, education and guidance. This is curated by experts in and part of Linewize. We're talking clinical psychologists, SROs, principals, administrators of school districts that are part of this journey and supplying resources, training, FAQs for our parents and staff even to help them understand what this technology is coming home. And quite frankly, this is advocating for our districts as you decide what your digital infrastructure looks like in your district. So that's a little bit about Linewize, and I hope that helps. And if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Well, I'm going to jump in here for a minute because Terrisa, I think Marc knows this story. I think I've told this story maybe on the podcast, so I'll be brief. But I actually discovered Linewize by accident at my first RTM. Thank you, Marc. And came with a list of questions and had narrowed my RTM sessions down to just the filter providers. And we're grateful to have a good community of ACPE filter companies. Linewize won the day. You were 6 steps out ahead of the others on my 4 questions that I asked the exact same way on each of those visits. And it was around that student safety, student mental health, already working on the language translation and natural language processing and how that's used in health and safety conversations. And so, and then we brought you different products in for review in our region, and Linewize was the top of the scoring in those evaluations. Nicole, I understand you're a Linewize customer also.
We've had Linewize as a filter for quite a while. Before my time here, we had it. We added Monitor next, and then ClassWise is our most recent addition. When we had just Linewize as a filter, it really won us over because of the customer service, to be quite honest. We can start a chat and we get a really quick and personalized response, and it allows my whole team to work together when we need to make changes instead of just one person who specializes in just the filter. And we're a small district and we're only a team of 3, so we have to wear many hats. So that's kind of what won us over. And then we had another product we were using for monitoring students and alerts, and there were a lot of false positives or false flags with that. And so I noticed that it was really hard for people to pay attention and take the alerts seriously because there were so many false results. So the live monitoring and the phone call going out if it's above a certain level, and that has really changed that for us. We don't get all of those false alerts, and now people take it very seriously when it comes through. The other thing is we couldn't see when someone had responded to an incident, so you'd have multiple people follow up. And this allows you to see who's viewed the event and if it's been closed and taken care of or not. So we really appreciate having that as part of the tools we have in our district. And then ClassWise was our most recent add. I think we might have just added it partially for our district last year, and we moved all the way everyone over this year. And what really sold us on it was because it works with our filter. It allows teachers to be able to block and unblock sites as they're teaching. And a lot of times we have teachers who will lesson plan, and because they're in a different OU as staff, they won't realize that unless they open up a Chromebook and they log on as a student, they won't realize that their experience is different than their students. So then they get into the middle of class and we start getting help desk tickets because their students can't access what they had planned. So we've really started to use that a lot, especially in secondary, because we also have projects where their need to research subject matter, we would usually have blocked. So this allows teachers to unblock it for just that class period for research. We also use it for when we have students out sick. We have Zoom blocked in general, but a teacher can unblock it for the class period for their kids and only their class. For kids who are at home who want to Zoom in, especially for our AP classes, they do that a lot for students that are absent.
Yeah, that sounds similar. I think ClassWise in our region, again, Linewize kind of sits there in the background for most of the end users in the district, but ClassWise has really become valuable to the teachers, especially teachers in those secondary classes. Same as your story, Nicole.
Nicole, I think if I can jump in here, one of the comments you made, I think everyone feels support is critical, right? To work with a partner who actually is there to be there to support you from customer success to actually that chat. And I think the funniest story I have is one of your districts, Rachel, made a funny comment about this in the ESD where they said, I think I've talked to the same person at least twice whenever I entered the chat. So they know it's a real person and it's someone they may have talked to in the past. And that chat is very, very popular. And I can brag about it all day because I'm partial. But thank you for sharing that, Nicole, because that means a lot. And it's a testament that I'm bragging for a reason whenever I talk about that chat support.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've even had someone who's helping us on the chat make a personalized video for us on how to do something in our district, and then we can like save the video and use it over and over. So it's the best customer service I think that we've ever used with any filter product.
Here too. So, Marc, I don't know if we have to like do an FCC disclaimer or E-rate disclaimer or something. We did not plan this. We really planned this episode as an episode to kick off a 3-part series of women in tech, and not like a surface level, like women in tech, but conversations with women in tech about the work we do. It doesn't have to be necessarily about women in tech topics. And it just so happens that on this first one, we ended up pairing Terrisa from Linewize with 2 of us who are Linewize customers and are really appreciating that product. And Terrisa, again, we thank you for your sponsorship and for being here tonight to tell stories with us.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
I mean, it's an important product. Every school district has something, right? At this point in time, everybody has something. And the purpose of that something isn't just to filter students on the internet. It's also to help keep them safe. And, Terrisa is a friend of mine. I have other friends with other companies, and they all say the same thing. It's not that they're there to block websites for kids. It's that they're there to keep kids safe and keep them healthy and protect them. And that's huge. I mean, you're in it for the mission. So it's really powerful.
And increasingly supporting learning alongside that, right? In these class-wise products, especially.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to do one quick jump back, and then we're going to turn it over to Nicole to kind of say hello and tell us about her journey and current position. But Terrisa, you said, like, I was in tech before there was the internet. Well, I just want to say I am this old that my first technology job was carrying punch cards, rubber banded, because I dropped the first set when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and that was a mess. Carrying punch cards down to the computer windows with my dad on Saturday mornings when he would go in to program at UNIVAC. And the computers, for anybody who's seen Desk Set with Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, amazing movie. But the computers were all generally older women at the window. And now that I sit here telling this story, I realize they were probably like 28 years old. So 30 years old. Watch what you say. But they would give me candy. So I became like, my mom was pregnant. My dad would take me into the office on Saturday mornings, and I would color on the green and white printout paper. They'd punch cards. I'd take them down to the computer windows. They'd give me a piece of candy. They'd run the cards to test the routine. They'd send me back with a slip and the cards again. So I was just the little runner. And that was my first story about technology in my life. And yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
I came from you died of dysentery. So like,
yes,
the
Oregon
old
Trail.
Apple labs. Yeah, I was like, this is awesome. And the
Yes.
typing labs. And that was,
Typing labs. Yeah. Yep. So I could tell another 10 minutes of stories about being that old in technology and as a woman in technology. Nicole, you are not as old as I am. We don't want to know your age. I just know for sure that you're not as old as I am.
Wait. Is she older or younger than Claire Danes?
She is definitely younger.
Okay, clearly the rest of you haven't seen that or watched that episode yet or listened that I am older than Claire Danes. That's the name of the episode, is that Marc is older than Claire Danes.
Yeah, because Marc was like, she's so old. Like, she's not aging well. Her chin wobbles. It's really hard.
No, I said her chin
aging
wiggles because she cries so much in that show. That was what that was about. But that's our age reference. From now on, that's our age reference.
She's not aging well. I need to warn you all. She's not aging well.
Okay,
she's aging beautifully.
Please don't sue me.
she's aging how she should.
Exactly. It's a gift for each of us to be alive as we hit these years. But Nicole, you are also now a woman in leadership in technology. Did you, like Terrisa and me, take a circular or a windy path there? Or was it what you dreamt of being?
No, and spoiler alert, I will tell you that I am just about to turn 40 this summer. So
Marc. Happy 40, Nicole.
She's younger than Claire Danes.
Yep. And way younger than Marc, therefore.
I definitely didn't think that I would be working in IT at 40. My first experience with technology, or at least computers, my dad is actually an engineer, but he does not have a college degree. I'm the first one on that side of the family with any type of college degree. But he is a licensed engineer. He was able to pass the exam without going to college. He started as a plumber and did electrical work and heating and cooling, and kind of all this life experience allowed him to pass the exam and become licensed without a college degree. And he can fix anything. He's just really bright and always tinkering with things. So when I was a little kid, he built a desktop computer, and that was like the mid 80s. So that was like kind of, a cool thing. And he worked for a heating and cooling company and did some programming and stuff. And I would go into his office sometimes, and I would be really impressed that he could type on the keyboard without looking at it. And, I thought it was really cool that I got to play games on this computer sometimes. But as I got older in high school, then you start to think your parents are really not cool anymore. I grew up in a more rural town, and he wore cowboy boots and every day to work, even if he was dressed up. And that was like kind of embarrassing. And I had kind of like been like, I'm never going to be like my dad. And then when I went to high school and stuff like that, there just weren't a lot of women in technical roles. Even when we were doing events in Science Olympiad, there weren't like a lot of girls put on technical teams. And so actually, when I went to college, I needed to make money, and I applied for jobs on campus. The one I got was working in a computer lab, and I was just like, I can do this, but it wasn't like the cool, flashy other jobs I was applying for. And I started doing that, and I worked my way up, and I worked on the bench, um, and I started doing Apple warranty repairs, and I got married and moved back home and worked for a small company doing really individualized IT support for small businesses in Seattle and the greater Portland area. I really, partway through college, I was like a psychology major. I really realized that this is what I love to do. It checked all the boxes for me. Like once I separated it out from like being a teenager and thinking my dad wasn't cool, I realized I loved it. It was like stimulating for me. I loved that it was always changing and I was always learning things. I really like a challenge. So it was really fun to be one of the only women or the only woman on a team and take the jobs that like no one else wanted and be like, look what I can do with it. Like that, I got a lot of satisfaction out of that and felt like I had kind of found my place, and I just loved it. And I realized at that point that I was not going to become a psychologist at all. Like this was where my heart was.
May I jump in there for just a moment? Yeah. And then do you have some days in your job now where you realize I'm a little bit of a psychologist?
Yeah, especially probably as a parent too. But I definitely would never switch and go back. This is definitely where my heart is. And working in education, I think my former boss once said, what if you went and got your teaching certificate? And I just was like, I love working in a school and I love supporting education, but that is just like my calling is really IT. Anyway, so now I work for a smaller district. We're pretty rural. I live out in the sticks. I think you've seen me at the conferences. Oftentimes I do have cowboy boots on or, some kind of like Western aspect to my outfits or something. And it's kind of like a little bit of a nod to my dad because now he laughs because he was so uncool. And I was like, I will never be like you. And I ended up following a similar path. To kind of circle back, I feel like part of it was my personality and how my brain works with troubleshooting and hard work. But I think there were also times people took a chance on me. They held the door open for me just a little bit and gave me a chance. And two of those times were at the district that I work at now, two of the biggest times. The first one was when I applied for this job here. at Le Center. I was 8 months pregnant with my fourth child, and I saw the posting come up. My kids were already going to school here. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to apply for this job. And he looked at me like I was crazy. It was high risk pregnancy. And I was like, a month away from having the baby. I didn't even buy new maternity clothes for the interview. I went to Goodwill and just like got a couple things to wear for the interview because I was like, I'm not going to sell myself or make myself fit into something that's not right. It's not the right time in my life. I'm just going to go be myself and see what happens. And I went to the interview and they called me later. They offered me the job. It was actually my former boss. And he said, so realistically, when would you like to start? And he's like, just say whatever and we'll see where we go from there. Because I wouldn't have maternity leave when I started. I wouldn't have been working long enough, but I was obviously going to have a baby soon. And I said, I would really like to start working when my son is 3 months old. He said, let me see what I can do. And he went and talked to the superintendent at that time, and they worked out a situation where they hired a temp to cover for me and let me have that time unpaid. And that was a huge gift. The other thing is one of my coworkers that's still on my team right now, I was interviewing against men who had more experience than I did. And I didn't know this till later, obviously, but he said, I will quit if you hire anyone but her. And so I really have had a couple situations where people have really taken a chance on me, and they really did, because I could have had my last son and decided not to come back, right? And they would have had to hire again. They really took some big chances on me, and I really appreciate that. And I realize that I'm really lucky because that doesn't happen for everyone. And that kind of leads into the last Women in Tech huddle. We were talking about what does it look like to make sure everyone has a place at the table and feels comfortable and they don't have to fight for having a voice or a place. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about now.
Nicole, I was eyes watering at least 2 or 3 times as you talked. I knew some of this story from getting to know you the past couple of years. I did not know how all of the pieces connected. And I celebrate you and the fact that you were more of a straight line, I think, than some of us as you end up, in this leadership position, also as a mom and raising kids, caring for a district, caring for community, the things that we all do for those of us who are drawn to work in schools and especially in technology in schools. Like you said, encouraged to get our teaching degrees and encouraged to think of some other pathways as well. But there's also this beauty and joy and a little bit of psychology that we get to do, right, with people and their technology most days. And what a gift to have you here with us here this evening, and cannot wait to have our cowboy boots on again at ACPE and dance again and get Marc dancing. Terrisa's on it.
Let's not go there.
I'm on it. Don't threaten me with a good time.
So Nicole, in Le Center, we're going to come back to the Women in Tech huddles and a few other things. But in Le Center, what are your big projects and priorities this year, both in terms of what you want to do with technology and then the district as a whole? And for those in the listening audience who don't know Le Center, do you want to give just a little bit of where you are, that you're one of our Washington ACPE friends?
Yeah, we are definitely Southwest Washington. We're we're probably 40 minutes north of Portland, Oregon. I think most people are pretty familiar with Ilani, the casino. That is the exit for Le Center.
Wait, that's how it's pronounced.
It's Ilani, yeah.
Ilani. Okay, thank you.
Ilani.
Yeah. I know it trips everyone else up, I think, but anyone who lives around here, we know. Ridgefield is right across the freeway from us. They've grown incredibly fast. Our school districts used to be about the same size, and now it's, I think, about triple the size we are.
And is also the home of the In-N-Out Burger.
Yes. And Costco, which is pretty exciting.
Wait, I thought Marc meant like the original In-N-Out.
No, they just built an In-N-Out Burger.
Le Center used to be called Podunk. That was the first name of the town, but now it's Le Center. And
really? Like
it was
literally
Podunk, Washington. So we have a restaurant in town called podunk pizza, and my daughter played on a youth basketball team and they were the podunkers. And
That's awesome.
yeah, but we have one elementary, one middle, and one high school. It's about, I don't know, 1,750 students. I think we have about 170 employees, something like that. So we're not huge, but we also aren't like incredibly tiny. And we participate in this group that's formed, this small medium school district group in this area, where we use our brains to figure out how to do more with less, because I think that's where everyone is. And some of the projects we are focusing on right now are cybersecurity, and that's hard when you are a small team and you're rural. But the risks are so great that I really feel like it has to be part of your priorities. And I think some of that means it's not going to be perfect and it's not going to be exactly what you want it to be, but starting that process and making little steps in the right direction are better than nothing. And some of that has to do with segmenting our network, backups, those kinds of things. The Cowlitz tribe is the tribe that owns Ilani, and they gave us a grant a couple years ago, which allowed us to replace old projectors, and that has really been a gift for us and has really changed the way we use technology in the classrooms. That kind of cascaded to other upgrades in order to work with the projectors. We have short throw projectors. And the other thing we are really working on, and it's challenging because you have to be really mindful of people's time and you don't want it to just be a checkbox, is working with our users to educate them, especially with all of the phishing attempts via email and the spoofing that we're seeing more of, and really creating a culture where we will never ever be frustrated or upset if someone brings something to our attention. It doesn't end up being a serious situation, because I would rather see it and be like, oh no, that's okay, than not, and really thinking about how do we double check whether something's legitimate or not. And our staff is doing a really good job of that. We're starting to dip our toes in student data privacy and AI and how those things are related and how we work through that. And also, how do we use the data that we collect to help students have a more individualized learning experience? And those are the big things on our horizon right now.
Those are huge things with a team of 3 especially. And to your point, regardless of the size of our districts in ACPE that go from the very tiny to the very large, the cyber threats are the same.
Yeah. And April put on a workshop for us recently, and she is like a celebrity here.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
I'm going to mention it tomorrow on the K-12 panel. I'll find a way to weave this in.
Yeah. The session we had was standing room only. Everyone knows her. They know her work. They know what a great job she does. And we all learned so much. There are people in that room that I have never seen before in my 7 years in the district. It was such a draw, and it was such a positive experience and positive energy to have like all of these teams and schools come together. And MCOA and ESD hosted it, and they organized April being there. It kind of gave me goosebumps because it brought the districts and the teams together in a way I haven't seen since before COVID. And that was just a really cool experience. And we all just like learned so much. She did a tabletop exercise, and also she brought in some software to show us how people are gathering information. And it was really impressive. We all learned a lot.
Cheers to you, April. And Nicole, I am so happy that you were there. I'm sorry that I'm sitting here grinning like a fool this whole episode because, first of all, Terisa's storyline coming in this unique role that filters play in our lives right now. And then Nicole's story, which just is amazing. It's really great to sit here tonight and talk about this. So, Nicole, touching on AI, can we loop Terrisa back in? Do you have some kind of analysis of what's happening in terms of district postures? And again, not obviously calling out any individual districts, but what's happening in terms of AI as it relates to filters? And sorry if I put you on the spot for something that you're not ready to share yet.
Well, I'm ready to share it because
right.
it's let's go.
Let's go.
It actually blends into the cybersecurity posture, quite frankly. And that's part of why I'm doing the panel tomorrow at the Cybersecurity Summit, because it does lend itself to a broad conversation. Every district is not the same in terms of how they are approaching AI, but we also recognize that AI is becoming a part of everything we're doing. I'm a ChatGPT and Gemini girl. I will plug in the same question to both just to see what produces outcome, right? And I'm taking a look at that. And when we think about school districts and their security postures, we also forget to think about this is exciting. They look at the scary, and then they recognize that their teachers that are in the curriculum in the classroom probably don't know how to use it either. And then they're being asked to teach it. So I'm seeing districts take different postures, whether it be we're blocking it now because we're taking the time to educate our staff on the fundamentals of what AI really is. It's not this big scary thing, but it's a powerful thing that can do a lot of great things, but can also be a distractor and potential problematic. And how they're approaching that is very, very widespread. And so from the Linewize space, we're leveraging AI ourselves. But then you think about the security posture of where is our AI right positioned in how we're capturing data and staying compliant and managing that data privacy without sending it off to a third-party tool. So we look at that inherently as we develop our AI, and that is our internal AI that's not going to that third party because of the compliance and legislation that's coming up in so many states around AI postures in not just K-12, but higher ed, commercial, and everything else, but also giving districts the flexibility to remain pretty much autonomous in how they deliver AI, whether it be block it, allow only one of them, right? Some districts are just using Gemini. They don't want their users using ChatGPT or Claude. Others are getting really frustrated. Some of our teachers, Nicole, I don't know if it's happening in your school district, are frustrated because of the AI overviews that are in Google and Bing, because those are automatically showing up as a tool for kiddos to use, and it's becoming a distractor as well in some cases. And so that's where Linewize is taking a posture of taking a look at it as the Switzerland, so to speak, but also keeping in mind legislatively compliance, data privacy with our VPATs, et cetera, of how we're approaching it to support our districts as well. So very broad topic. There's a lot of global legislation that we're seeing come out in like Australia around AI. That's become very interesting that we're watching very closely. There are certain states that are actually taking it down to, are we even giving devices to kiddos? That's interesting coming out of Utah, if you guys have been watching. So we're going to watch that one very closely. Cell phones, even down to that area. But in regards to AI, it's a very broad topic. I have concerns personally, in my personal opinion as a parent, for our teachers trying to navigate this in their classes. They're not getting the coaching and the training in some cases, whereas some districts are actually applying PD and resources to teachers to get them up and running on AI, to understand the tool so that they can take it into their classrooms the most effective way they can.
Amazing. Terrisa, let me ask filter geeky questions. Does Linewize do aggregation of high volumes of data that then allow you to do like trend spotting and future casting? So I imagine that at some level, because of product improvements and helping with your roadmap and things like that. But do you know if it's something that Linewize would ever do where there's like a state of what's happening in K-12 schools?
I think you're looking for, what does that data capture look like in terms of how Linewize takes that data to be more effective with our product as we deliver new technology and innovation to our districts. Is that what you're asking?
A little bit of that, but also this idea of, as we're in this space where we have this new technology bloom brought about by AI, think about, do you remember when it was even more cool 20 years ago when Google would do like the year in search?
Yeah.
Like, what are people searching for? What are they, trying to find? What were the top search words? I think it was when the internet was young and it was hopeful and it was optimistic. Now we might not want to know with the state of the world right now, but just wondering about such a large data set where it can be anonymized and it can really just be kind of that trends of, what are the kids interested in? What are the kids doing? Where is AI specifically, was where I was going with this, is where is AI in the number of times that students or teachers try to get to it and it's hitting blocks. And as I started to ask you that question, I realized that you may not keep for any meaningful amount of time that volume of data in the
Correct.
logs.
Yeah.
So I have a question that I posed to the group. I'm interested to see, Nicole, where you land on this, because we're the two one school district people. We own that data. That's our data. Like, what if I want that data? Maybe I want to use that data. I want 6 months of search history for my kids, and I want to mine that data, and I want to use that data in a meaningful way. But I mean, I think that's something then that, and I'm not saying this is Linewize in particular, that's something you need to go, you have to have an understanding of the product you're using, of, do they scrub that data? How long do they hold that data? Can you customize the length of the retention of that data? And what does that look like in your student data, in your DPA? What data is there? And I come back to, it's yours. And
it is.
Chris and I had this argument in our unplanned session on the ethics of that. Should we get to use our students' data to trend out things that we would never see based on the collection and the use of AI to analyze it? It's things that we could never do before. I don't know. There's my question and pondering.
I'm gonna stay as long as I can.
Yes.
And you don't have to cut this part. Like, this is part of Women in Tech, is I have little kids and it's getting late and I have someone babysitting. But until I hear little hands knocking on the door, I'm going to keep going, because I think this is a really cool conversation.
Well, I want to drag this into what I was hoping for today, which is, I want to hear your stories. I know Rachel emailed about this a little bit, and I have sat through one of her roundtables at an RTM about women in tech, and I was the only guy there. I want to change the direction just a little bit, because we are a largely male-dominated group at ACPE, and I think there's a lot to learn from the three of you that we just don't consider. Like, I even had my own moment last week with our chief academic officer, who said, you have a good old boys club. And I said, what are you talking about? And I followed up with, if I've ever done anything that is remotely offensive because of my gender, I really hope you call me on it. I don't think that I do. I don't know that I don't. And so my perspective may be a little bit skewed. And I was kind of hoping to learn a little bit today with some of the things you have to share. And Rachel's kind of smirking at me right now.
I was just going to say, so Nicole, I think there was a moment there, right? That before the knock starts coming on the door, as we talk about this arc for the kids in our schools and our buildings, and being a woman in technology, was there a moment that we diverted you from that you can pull back and kind of lean into before the kids show up?
Sure. I guess I would start by saying, of all of my experiences in tech and awkward or uncomfortable moments, I've experienced the fewest of them working in educational IT. I will say that the private sector was worse, for sure. And to be quite honest, so I worked as a tech at this district for 3 years and the current leadership position for 4 years. And when I think that it's a very common experience throughout all of my roles, is that when you show up to help someone with technology, and it isn't always men, sometimes it's other women too, they will be kind of shocked to see you sometimes, or question whether you are in the right place or you can help them. When I started working at this district, a lot of times I would get, oh, are you the substitute teacher? Are you the para? That kind of thing. I even had, I can't even remember who it was now, but it was someone I didn't even work with. And when I told them, oh, I took this job working for the school district, and it was another woman, she said, do you know how to do that? And I kind of was like taken aback, like, I wouldn't have applied, and I think it's just so ingrained right now. And it's really interesting, because I heard you talk about the punch cards, and I've talked to some other women who have obviously worked in IT longer. And one of them said she was really high up in Boeing and just retired recently. And she said, actually, at the beginning with computer science, it was mostly women, because they saw it as like a secretarial task with like the punch cards and stuff, which shocked me, because somehow it flipped. But I think for me, that experience of having people not believe in you, which kind of, I guess, works its way into believe it, right? For ACPE, right? But But to have people
Well
not
done.
believe in you has always been really a really big motivator for me. I really want to prove to people that I can do it and I can do it well and that I'm just as good as anyone else, if not better. And that probably sounds maybe a little bit vain or something, but I think that is like sort of how I got the jobs. Every job I've ever held in IT, I've had to compete with men. It'd be like, and men that generally had more experience because for whatever reasons are out there, they'll tell you that they're granted access to those things more often than women and girls are still, even to this day. And you see, even in our middle and high school programs, we start losing them in middle school for whatever reason, right? When we're trying to get kids into, girls especially, into science, technology, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of it is unintentional, but if you are not feeling comfortable in yourself or in the field, it can really shut people down from being open to working in that field. And it's really interesting because if I walk into a room with a male counterpart, I did when I was training here, they wouldn't ask him where he went to college or what his degree was in or ask for any kind of references that would prove that he could do the job, but they would for me because I was unusual. I've always seen that as like kind of a challenge, like especially when I took this leadership role and it was hard and it was challenging and there were days where I was overwhelmed and I kind of wanted to give up sometimes. I was like, I have to do a good job. I want to do a good job because the next time a woman or someone else who you don't see very often in these roles walks up, I want the experience to be the people who questioned whether I could do it before know the next person can do it. 110%. They don't even doubt.
Sing it, Nicole. Every single one of those words. Yes, 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 yes.
I mean,
Marc.
is it the same, Terrisa? I mean,
Pause.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but there's for me, my background, I love this, Nicole, because while our backgrounds are similar in terms of kind of the trajectory in terms of the space, how we started there is very different because I worked in a sales tech role. So funny you said that, Marc. There was a company I worked for, they called it the fraternity. Bunch of good old boys is what they called it. And here I was, this lowly little saleswoman in a tech role. And I think how I've seen it, I mean, I have stories for days, but we probably have to NC this entire podcast, so we're not going to go there.
No
But,
explicit ratings, please.
yeah, so we're not going to do that. We see it nationally. There's women in tech communities that are growing in the country for a reason, is because there's this a foundational, are we enough technically? There's a perception out there, I think, inherently that says women you're in technology, your male counterpart into that same meeting is going to be perceived to be more technical than you are. And to take that and say, oh, wait a second, I could walk circles all over this person. It's a perception thing, and utilizing those soft strengths to then take that and drive your message forward. I'm part of another woman in tech. It's called PluggedIn, that brought in a phenomenal woman to talk about this. And it's absolutely true. Is when we think about leadership from a female and a male perspective, it's, when you think about the more feminine qualities, they could be applied to men and women, empathy, intuition, inclusivity, collaboration, whereas a masculine trait, which is where we're seeing a lot of men in these higher roles, is coming from control, right? You got to control your group of people. There's that control of competition. There's a hierarchy of things. But where women bring, I think, phenomenal soft skills is taking those intuitions, that journey, our complex lives are just as complicated as yours, Marc, right? And bringing those to the table in a different way and having a seat, and then being able to mentor those young women that are coming into the field, saying, yeah, you are as technical. Your brain may work differently than a male's, but you're going to bring a little bit more because of that. This is why I came into the sales role as I did and grew into the sales role, is because of my relational and intuitive background. And that's what helped escalate my journey into the role I'm in today. But I leaned into those soft skills that helped me and help my team around me champion that and help me just be that person. And now I'm mentoring these younger women that are growing into our organization. Use those strengths. Don't hesitate. Don't be afraid. And like you said, Nicole, get that seat at the table because it matters and it's important.
Yeah. I have so much to say on all of this, but I just want to say that I am competitive, and partly from at the beginning, Nicole, when I said I'm going to loop some of this back to that story of my dad and the punch cards and desk set. Even though the computers in the window, right, were largely female, they were not secretarial. They had the same skill set. They often were the debuggers who could uncover what wasn't working and then report it back to the programmers. And we have these giants of women before us that include Admiral Grace Hopper, Dorothy Vaughan, Katherine Johnson, and Mary Jackson. There was a recent book and movie that came out of it, Hidden Figures, talking about the essentially unrecognized female coders throughout history who have been carrying a lot of this work and they did not get the recognition. And I think about it in my career path, 25, 30 years now from the beginning of this, there were more women in my programming classes when I was in early college in Fortran and Pascal. And something started happening in the mid 90s where by the time I got to graduate school, and then it was web programming languages, I was one woman in my classes. It was not 50-50 in Fortran and Pascal. It was not even 50-50 in the data science languages at the farther end of graduate work. I don't know exactly what happened to make it the boys club Marc or the fraternity Terrisa, but something did. And when we hope that this is an eyelash of our human history, and when we look backwards at the collaborative spirit and the community-based approach to problem solving, that sometimes shows up heavier in women and contrasts with some of the, I'm going to go figure it out on my own. I'm going to run super fast. That sometimes is more associated with being male, right? And these are not absolutes. They're often taught rather than being intrinsic. It is still startling to me, Nicole, that you have these moments, right? As a woman younger than me, I loved that what you were talking about, and thanks to Shelby Reynolds for organizing and hosting the Women in Tech huddles this year. That idea, Nicole, of making space and finding space for the not bossy Rachels, creating space for them. How do we start being really intentional at that in ACPE? And not just in Women in Tech huddles, but how do Marc, right? Like, how do we try to foster this work across the organization and across the country? Because my dad, as I was moving through these early years, and I was going to be first of all, I was going to be president of the United States. And then I went to college and I actually worked in government for a couple summers and as an intern. And I realized who in the world would want to be in politics for their life? Bless them all. And then I was going to be an elementary school teacher. And so then I kind of changed up and went the elementary education route, but kept coming back like you, Nicole, to this like really deep programming and logic and figuring out how things kind of work. And my dad said, as somebody who's retired in the past decade from a lifelong career as a programmer, said, you are going to have to do it better, faster, stronger, backwards and heels to get the same job as the men in the application pool who are half as talented as you. And then the goal is, how do you then elevate and hire the women to keep increasing? Like, can I have my little drops of rain that hit the surface of the pond that ripple and make bigger ripples? And so it is everyday work. Nicole, there are times, right, when we show up in meetings. Terrisa, there are times when you show up in meetings. And it's that, okay, I'm going to have to either just listen or I'm going to have a moment where I'm going to have to edge myself into the conversation.
So I'm going to ask this question or have a request. And it's going to come out wrong. And I know it's going to come out wrong the first time. And then I'm going to correct myself because I know this is where I'm going in my head. But from the three of you, and I'm going to say, what should somebody like me, what's one thing that I should take away from this to better work within my environment? But I'm going to change that now to What's one thing a supervisor or a person in a position of power should take away from this? Because it's not just men. I recognize that there are also women who see other women. I assume that, I guess. I'm looking at Rachel. She doesn't know it. She's got a look on her face that may fall into stereotypical patterns. I mean, what's something that people in positions of power should know or practice or be self-aware of?
I think the peers that I appreciate the most are the ones that treat me completely as an equal, and they don't seem to be super uncomfortable around me. And to Rachel's point, I think we feel that like we have to prove ourselves and do it better, faster, and the peers that don't expect that from me, right? And that I think even we do it to ourselves a little bit. Like sometimes I think as a woman, you might be slower to ask a question because you might think it might sound stupid or wrong, or like you don't know what you're talking about. And the peers and supervisors I have who give me the space to just be more unfiltered than I have to be as a woman. I feel like there's a lot of people who are I work with a lot of teachers, and actually my sister's one of them. And one day she came into my office and she said, "I've never seen you cry at work ever." And she's like, "I cry like every year multiple times." And she's like, "I don't know how you do it." And I told her, I learned that I can't do that. I don't have the space or the luxury to do that, or a lot of people won't take me seriously and they'll say I'm emotional. And I really want us to get to a place where, like Rachel was saying, there's a place at the table. You don't have to do it better, faster. You don't have to have a hard shell on the outside. You like you don't have to fight for it quite like that. And I think for me, there were times when I was younger where I really tried to fit in or like take up less space. And sometimes that even meant in IT not being as traditionally feminine, if that makes sense. And I've really stopped doing that. And for me, it's like a combination of things. It's like partially like a cultural thing and where I am in life. But when I go to conferences, meetings, when I'm working here on campus, I no longer try to fit in. I just try to be myself. I don't try to be less feminine because I want to remind people that you can be whoever you want and you can be as stereotypically feminine as you want to be. And that doesn't mean you're not capable. And I'm hoping if people see that enough, they will stop having that thought process. And it's not even meant to be malicious most of the time. It's just something that has like happened and been spoon fed and cultivated. And the other thing is like when I go to ACPE a lot, you'll see me wear clothing that has been like designed by a native artist. And I wear it because that is something, because I'm white and native. There have been times in my life where I have hidden that more because I didn't want to deal with the comments or the questions or it was uncomfortable. I've stopped doing that because I think it's really important for people to see that and know that I'm confident in who I am. And yes, it's like unusual to be a native woman working in IT or in a leadership role, but I want people to see that and see that presence there and have it stop being so uncommon, I think.
Sing it again. All of that. Marc, what do you think the answer to the question is?
I don't know that I know the answer to the question. I think that I know how I would like to be and how I hope I am. And I don't know that I am necessarily all the time because I'm not constantly self-reflecting, but I'm the kind of person that, I'm going to be me and I want everybody around me to be themselves too. And I don't want anybody to basically front on my behalf. I want to see the real you. And I don't care if you're a man, woman, or anybody. I just, I'm not getting, from an employer standpoint, I'm not getting the best you if you're not yourself. And that's what's important to me. And if anybody here has worked with me before, you know that I'll say whatever comes to mind. And that's just how I expect other people to be. And it hurts my heart to know that some people feel like they can't do that.
Perhaps a topic for another episode, speaking of this, so that it's not about one person and people feeling free to be themselves. Well, that is definitely like a good place to start. and feeling safe and comfortable, having psychological safety at work. I wonder about the idea of thinking more from the approach of how do you build teams that self-cycle diversity and inclusion? And therefore, it's not a Marc with a soft heart. I take your question with all of the good that it brings and wonder about leveling up in terms of creating dynamic teams, that it's not something that one individual has to carry or even think about.
Yeah, I mean, there was no easy way for me to ask that question.
Yeah, no, that's,
No,
I mean,
it's not easy.
I've never experienced anything that has made me uncomfortable with any of the people on this. And to be honest, I think this year is going to be my 4th ACPE, I think. I've never actually had an experience there that has made me really feel that way. It's been in the private sector, it definitely was different. I would say that I have had a lot of experiences of male peers helping me, saying like, hey, if you struggle with this or you want to know about it, come out to my district or I'll come out and help you, or email me or call me. I really have not experienced that as much in educational IT. It doesn't mean that it isn't there, and it does still happen. It's interesting though that most of the time it's not happening for me within the IT community. It's outside of it in education, if that makes sense. So that has been really positive. And I remember going to the first ACPE and being really kind of like, oh my gosh, especially since I don't take a team. There's only 3 of us, so it's only me. So the first year I went, I felt kind of like I had to like walk over to people's tables and be like, hi, can I sit with you guys? But I got so much out of that, connecting with all of these people that I don't usually talk to. And most of them were men because that's the majority of the population there. And everyone was just super supportive and willing to talk to me and willing to be helpful and open. And I think the other really cool thing about most of the women I've met who work in IT is that a lot of them are competitive, but they're almost more competitive with themselves than with other people. And so they often have these really kind hearts where they're like ready to help up the next person. They don't feel insecure or jealous, or they don't feel like they have to be top dog and outshine someone else. And I really love that about this community. It's like when I met Rachel, I just felt like this like instant connection. We both really like to dance, and I think you could like it, Marc. I grew up on like 90s country, so maybe you need like a country line dance. I don't know what you grew up on, but the women in tech, that's like a whole room full of women that are like, and some men come too, who have very similar stories. And it is like just this kind of feeling of community and support in general, I think, that I haven't experienced in the private sector.
Nicole, you touched on 2 things. You noticed that a lot of principals are male, even though teachers are overwhelmingly female. And so there are still these spaces where education, tech, there's still lots of work to do. I am so glad to hear that you have had a positive experience being someone who has come to ACPE more recently. And I love ACPE in this startling, astounding way. It's been a big, unexpected joy this second part of my career. But I will say, as a woman who attended ACPE in the prior decade and knowing my colleagues, female colleagues who were there in the early years, there was work to do. And I am grateful to Marc and to the other male colleagues and leaders in ACPE for hearing us, for taking it seriously, for making space for women on the board and women in leadership, and thinking of how do we make this a more inclusive conference than the kind of guys conference at the mountain that it may have been at one time. And celebrating that was a moment in time, and that the relationships that came out of that were true and solid and have been lifelong for so many. The technology sharing has had a depth to it all along, and yet there were some things that needed some sunlight and some attention paid. So Nicole, I think that there are still things that we would have people who would tell us, well, yes, Nicole, or yes, Rachel. And it's that curiosity and that invitation, and continuing to not be afraid to learn about things that we need to improve, that I think makes ACPE unique, and will take it into its future decades as well.
Yeah, and I think that is the approachability. I feel like you and Marc and Terrisa are all approachable. I hope that I come off that way too, but if you're not approachable, people won't tell you those things. They won't be vulnerable with you. And I think that's really important to hear that. Or this is my experience and it's different than yours. Sorry, Mark.
I
to
mean,
cut
we
you
did
off.
take a picture together last year, Nicole, you and
We
me.
did. And sequin blazers, right? Jackets.
That's right.
And yeah.
I know that you have children coming, and I'm going to take advantage of every minute until they're there. And they're probably there already. But I wanted to point out Terrisa and kind of why I wanted her to be on this episode, because it's a little different story, I think, on the vendor side of things. But for years now, I've watched how you work with your team because it's mostly women. And it has always stood out to me the way you operate. I mean, do you want to shed a little light on that? Or
Yeah, I do, but I kind of would love to hear first about what you've kind of observed so I can kind of lead into that from there.
I mean, I'm flying around all the time. This is the 24th ACPE for me. Like, it's been a while, but I've just watched you, and I hate to say it this way, so I'm going to do it again. You guys all look out for each other, and it's very obvious what you're doing. And yeah, I guess that's what I see, and I don't want to get into that any more than that.
Yeah. No, I think, thank you, by the way. So I kind of want to start a little backwards, getting into that, because it's an important foundation of why we are the way we are and how you've seen us and observed us. So, I'm really grateful to that, actually, because it's something I don't just obviously intuitively just think that people are witnessing. It's just coming naturally. When you think about how we're talking with your female counterparts and building them up, and it's actually communicating in a different way. And like, Nicole, your background is different. Rachel, your background is different. Mine's very different too. The way I'm very competitive. I played collegiate softball. I still play softball competitively, slow pitch, still travel around. It's something that's inherently built into me. But like you, Nicole, I am the one that will say, I will prove you wrong. But I also am very much the person, also, Mark, if you're that person seeking out how to be a leader to your female counterparts, I also look at that and bring that in internally to say, hey, what are things I can help you and understand to help ask the right questions? Your counterparts are all different, and you can ask the same question a different way, and you're going to get some amazing results and provide a safe space, literally, for your female counterparts to actually open up and have the dialogue and feel that they have that space to communicate all that in, being inclusive and being a part of that conversation. So really quick on that background, which leads me to how I look at the people that I'm with. Every single one of those amazing ladies I work with have different personalities and different dynamics and different ways they approach basic conversation and social dynamics. ACPE is overwhelming to a lot of people, men and women alike. I think I thrive in it personally. It's my celebration of all that everyone's accomplished for the year week. But in that same group of women that work in the same company, they have different roles. They approach those types of situations differently. And I've gotten to know each one of these ladies personally, and they've gotten to know me. And that's inherently how we take care of each other. We're checking in. Where are you? Are you safe, or you feel you can go off and have that conversation with that IT director, right? Or another vendor, right? When do you want to head out? If someone is uncomfortable, we're all going together, because we're in here as a team. We're leaving here as a team. And it's not about hurting feelings. It's not about ruining someone's good time. It's everyone's going to have a phenomenal time, and we're all in agreement of what that good time and what that interaction looks like. That's literally what we just do inherently. And so it makes it a very safe space for all of us. And it doesn't become a role or a burden, because at the end of the day, we're all enjoying that time and getting the impact that we want out of the conference, but also making everyone feel safe. Because I don't know about you guys, if one of my teammates or friends or counterparts, Rachel, Nicole, if you were there, were not feeling comfortable and I wasn't doing the thing to help support you, that doesn't feel good to me either.
Terrisa, I think I've observed, so you and Jordan and your team at Linewize is visibly closer. I've also noticed in different conferences and in lots of different technology vendor and technology partner settings, there's kind of like this bonding that I observe that happens. Even your competitors, even in like the same verticals, but then more broadly across verticals. And just like K-12, I think that people move probably between different companies over their career cycle. Am I picking up on that correctly? That there's
sure
also
are.
just in general, like, right, this kind of camaraderie bond that forms.
100%. Because I think in general, depending on, regardless of who you're with, we're building relationships across different women with different companies. I have great friendships with competitors in our space because I deeply respect what they do. Because, like you said earlier, Mark, we're all here to do the same thing, and it's all around protecting our children and providing a safe space for them to grow and thrive. I deeply respect all tech leaders and everybody in that space, and I say specifically women. I seek out those connections because, gosh, I want to learn, I want to grow, and I think that feeling is mutual. It creates this little camaraderie a little bit as you go and you develop really good relationships and connections that way along the way. And that's one of the reasons I love conferences. I get to see in person some of these amazing leaders across these organizations, and I see them once or twice a year. So you bet I'm going to take advantage of it and see how they're doing and celebrate those advancements in their roles. And how did you do that? Tell me the story about in the journey and take notes.
And I can imagine, hopefully it hasn't happened to you too often, Terrisa, but I wonder if there are moments similar to what Nicole touched on earlier where someone is like, yeah, but I really need to talk to like your boss, right? Like
100%.
Okay, it's great that you've got like my business card and we can make the connection, but I'm going to need to talk to your boss.
People clearly don't know Terrisa if they say that to her.
So, and then when you are the boss, right, and you're still female, and it's like, well, no, like really, what I really mean is I need to talk to like a guy about this because it's networking.
I'm not gonna give details, but you asked about a cringe story, and I'll never forget this. I was well into my career. Title, I had the reputation. District comes up. The guy looks at me, looks at my male counterpart and goes, "Are you technical enough for this question?" And I looked over at my counterpart, who happened to be in marketing, by the way. He just looks at me and goes, yeah, she's got this. And I went, "Try me. Give it a shot. And if I don't, I know an engineer who can, but $10 says I probably can answer your question." And I'll never forget that moment because it also reminds me of those, what we call the gender role in terms of what people perceive, like a male teacher, a male nurse, right? And all those little things where people are still surprised and flipping it on their side, Mark, just because you're the sole gentleman in the group here. It's the same thing for you too. You are assumed, you hear a male nurse or something,
gentlemen.
And I'm trying to be nice. We're on a podcast, but it's a similar thing. But that was a technical cringe moment for me for sure. And I got to tell you, the question was so basic. I actually wrote an email about it and sent it to my boss laughing. I was like, "You'd never believe what happened."
Like, is that all you got? Do you have a real question for me?
Congratulations. Here's your trophy for a great question.
I mean, it's just, that is so incredibly cringe from a standpoint of not gender roles, of just arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
At least I try to approach my job of, if I'm asking anybody a question, I'm assuming that they're smarter than me. And it leads to innovation when you're listening to everybody in your department and everybody around you in a way of I'm not better than you, I'm learning from you. And it doesn't, again, I come back to, it doesn't, to me at least, it doesn't matter the gender of the person.
Agree.
So Rachel, you've been asking questions. I want to hear your story.
It also does matter the gender. And it also often matters the skin color. So, Marc, I hear you. And what we have learned in these past couple of decades is that naming it, identifying it, and stating it is important as well. And I know where your heart is, right? And that's where, I think a lot of us are. And that didn't help us progress as much as we might have in some generations prior.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Marc and Rachel, you're asking a lot of the questions, and I think this is a one for a future podcast for sure. But what are some of the steps we can do to continue that change, right? For the better, and to continue this dialogue to actually be actionable change, and maybe make that pivot and start being those advocates for that in a really, really measurable way. That's what I would love to see happen. And maybe in a future podcast, I'll be watching and be like, yes,
That was Teresa's question. That's my question. Terrisa, I think that's a great way to wind this down. Nicole, what's your kind of closing thought? Anything that you wanted to say tonight or that you heard?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because as I hear you guys talk about this, it kind of circles back to AI again on some level for me, because I can tell you that my kids read the Magic Tree House books, and one of them was about, set in a time where women couldn't vote. And I have a son and a daughter who are like a year and a half apart in age, and they both came to me with this book, and they're like, women couldn't vote because they were little. And I had to explain, they didn't have the right to. And my son was like, why? And I was like, well, there was a time where women were considered not really human beings with rights, but more property. And they were just floored. And in that moment, I realized people aren't born that way, right? It's something that we learn and are taught at some level, even if it's subconsciously. And it makes me think about AI and how, like, when I was a psychology major, I realized that you cannot reprogram or reimage people, but you can machines, right? And now we have this experience with AI, which there's really like a relationship level with that we haven't had before. And that's one of the undervalued skills that women serve a lot of times in a lot of fields, including IT. And now we have this really crazy, exciting time where AI learns from us and we have control over what we give it. That's going to change the interactions, because like AI is not created knowing or with the context or the cultural learning that I wouldn't know how to do a job the same way a male counterpart would. It's really, really, I don't know, it's really exciting to me. It kind of comes back to that, and how we've been so afraid of, like, when I was in high school, it was like Google was like a thing, and my high school teachers didn't want us to use the internet to research things. They wanted us to use books, and everyone was afraid. And now it's like we use the internet all the time. It's a skill you need to have. It's the same thing with AI. And now, what if AI like changes the way we have relationships with technology and each other to some degree, and it allows you to ask questions that may be uncomfortable for you to ask to someone else, and the like maybe full circle of, like you were talking about the child and Pokemon, there for a long time. And when we talk about project-based learning and stuff, it's learning as you're living, right? With it not being learning to learn math, but to use math to do something in everyday life. And what if we circle back to that with AI?
Yes, please. And more female voices in the mix, because currently, Nicole, to your point, it's trained on a lot of things.
Yeah, that's
right?
A really good point. How do we make sure women are involved in that?
And you touched on, right, the relationship and the collaboration aspect that might be missing. So it is also an exciting time to think of the promise of moving more towards that context and understanding that you were touching on. AI knows facts, but doesn't have a human's emotions or the human context for the words often. And it's an exciting time to be alive, frightening as well, because it feels like it's like swords that keep doing this both ways. And also, I know that prior generations throughout history have had these moments where it's like, oh, this is the end, or this is the best thing ever. And here we are in 2026, still talking about them all. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. And I know that was like a lot of things, but I so enjoyed this, and I have to go be a mom now. But thank you so much for letting me be a part of it.
Same. Thank you for sharing the evening with us.
An honor to be on this with you, Nicole. Thank you.
Same. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right. Take care.
Bye, Nicole. Terrisa, thanks to you and thanks to Linewize for being such a big part of this episode. And we appreciate your sponsorship.
Thank you guys.
Thank
See
you.
ya.